In 2013, one of the biggest tech companies in the world made a decision that shocked Wall Street. Dell Technologies announced it was leaving the stock market, not because the business was collapsing or the company was bankrupt, but because its founder, Michael Dell, believed Wall Street no longer understood where technology was heading. At the time, Dell looked like a company trapped in the past. The PC market was slowing. Smartphones were taking over. Companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon were dominating the future of tech, and many investors believed Dell had already reached its peak. But Michael Dell saw something very different. He believed the next era of technology would not just be about phones or apps. It would be about the infrastructure powering the digital world, from cloud computing and data centers to artificial intelligence. The problem was that transforming Dell into that kind of company would take years, and Wall Street is not known for patience, so Michael Dell made an extraordinary gamble. He partnered with a private equity firm, Silver Lake, and launched a $25 billion buyout to take Dell private. Critics called it reckless. Some shareholders tried to stop it. But years later, that controversial decision would become one of the most important corporate comebacks in the tech industry. This is the story of the $25 billion bet that saved Dell. Michael Dell founded Dell in 1984 from a dorm room at the University of Texas at Austin. At the time, the personal computer industry was still young. Most computer companies relied on retail stores to sell their computers. But Michael Dell thought that made no sense. Why build large inventories of pre-made computers when customers could simply order exactly what they wanted directly from the company? So Dell started building and upgrading computers himself, then selling them directly to customers. That simple idea changed everything. By cutting out retailers, Dell could offer lower prices, customize computers more efficiently, and respond to market changes faster than competitors. The company grew aggressively throughout the 1990s. And during the internet boom, Dell became one of the most recognizable computer brands in the world. For years, Dell represented the rise of the PC era. Dell computers were everywhere, from homes to schools to corporate offices, and Michael Dell became one of the youngest billionaires in America. But technology changes fast, and by the late 2000s, the market began shifting. Smartphones and tablets were changing consumer behavior. PC sales slowed across the industry. Investors started questioning whether Dell's best days were behind it. Its stock price struggled. Wall Street increasingly viewed Dell as a hardware manufacturer with limited future potential. But internally, Michael Dell believed the market was misunderstanding the company. Because while consumer technology was changing, the world's demand for digital infrastructure was exploding. The internet's need for servers was growing rapidly, and businesses needed more data storage than ever before. Cloud computing still required enormous physical infrastructure behind the scenes, and Dell wanted to reposition itself for that future. In 2013, Michael Dell proposed something almost unthinkable. He wanted to buy back his own company and take it private. To finance the deal, Dell partnered with private equity firm Silver Lake in a transaction worth about $25 billion. The deal became one of the biggest corporate buyouts in tech history.
Best interest. The reaction to the adjournment today, a little confusion, some happiness, some anger, really depending on who you spoke to. Those who were in the Dell camp said that they felt that with the changes in the proposal that we saw this morning, this is a deal that will pass.
But the backlash was immediate. Many shareholders believed Dell was undervaluing the company. Carl Icahn, one of Wall Street's most influential activist investors and a major Dell shareholder, launched a public campaign against Michael Dell. he accused Dell and Silver Lake of lowballing shareholders and trying to take advantage of temporary weakness in the stock price.
I think it's ridiculous. It's really a travesty. It's almost like something like out of Saturday Night Live. Here's this guy.
What started as a buyout quickly turned into a public corporate war. It quickly escalated into lawsuits, public attacks, and aggressive shareholder campaigns. As the fight over Dell intensified, some investors began arguing that Michael Dell was trying to buy the company too cheaply. Other firms, including Blackstone, reportedly began approaching Dell shareholders with potentially better offers. That put Michael Dell under even more pressure, because if another buyer offered shareholders more money, his entire deal could fall apart. Eventually, Michael Dell was forced to increase the amount he was offering shareholders just to keep the buyout alive. Around the same time, Microsoft agreed to provide a $2 billion loan to help Michael Dell buy back the company from public shareholders. That drew attention because Microsoft rarely involved itself directly in corporate buyouts. But Dell remained one of the biggest suppliers of business computers running Microsoft software. In other words, Dell still played an important role in Microsoft's business ecosystem. The battle dragged on for months, and eventually, even Carl Icahn seemed to realize the fight was no longer winnable. After failing to stop the deal, he publicly acknowledged defeat and sarcastically congratulated Michael Dell before stepping aside. In 2013, the buyout was finally approved. Dell disappeared from the stock market. And away from Wall Street pressure, the company quietly began reinventing itself. Going private gave Dell something extremely valuable: time. Without quarterly earnings pressure, the company could think long-term, and Michael Dell began reshaping the company. Dell began expanding far beyond personal computers and deeper into the technology powering large businesses behind the scenes: servers, data storage, cloud systems, and the technology businesses relied on to operate. Then Dell made an even bigger bet. In 2015, Dell announced it would acquire EMC Corporation for roughly $67 billion. At the time, it became the biggest acquisition the tech industry had ever seen, and many analysts believed the deal was extremely risky because the company was already carrying massive debt from its privatization. After the acquisition, Dell's total debt burden would eventually approach roughly $50 billion. Wall Street saw massive risk, but Michael Dell was focused on something much bigger because EMC came with ownership of VMware, and VMware made software that helped many large companies manage their computer networks and digital operations. In simple terms, VMware helped companies run their computer systems more efficiently. And as cloud computing exploded, that became incredibly valuable. This acquisition transformed Dell's identity. The company was no longer just a PC manufacturer. It had become a major technology provider for large businesses, and the timing turned out to be almost perfect, because over the next decade, the world became increasingly dependent on cloud infrastructure. Streaming platforms, online banking, AI systems, e-commerce, all of it required massive computing infrastructure behind the scenes, exactly the kind of infrastructure Dell had spent years positioning itself around. By 2018, Dell wanted to return to the stock market, but instead of going public through a normal IPO, the company used its ownership stake in VMware to structure a different kind of return to public markets. The deal allowed Dell to become publicly traded again without following the traditional IPO process. When Dell returned to Wall Street, its valuation was estimated at around $70 billion. But many investors still had concerns. Dell was carrying massive debt after years of acquisitions and restructuring. Many analysts questioned whether Dell could successfully manage such a large and complicated company. Over time, Dell began simplifying parts of the business and selling some software assets to raise cash and reduce financial pressure. Then in 2021, Dell separated VMware into its own independent company again through a multi-billion-dollar deal.
Dell Technologies is announcing it's spinning off its 81% equity ownership of VMware, forming two standalone public companies. This plan calls for VMware to distribute a special cash dividend as much as $12 billion to all VMware shareholders.
As part of the separation, VMware paid Dell roughly $9 billion, allowing the company to reduce debt and strengthen its finances. And as the digital economy expanded, Dell was already positioning itself around the infrastructure powering it. Cloud computing had become central to the global economy. Data centers were expanding rapidly, and the demand for AI infrastructure was beginning to surge. Suddenly, the same company many investors once dismissed as outdated was positioned inside one of the fastest-growing areas of technology. Today, Dell looks very different from the company that left Wall Street in 2013. Dell Technologies now powers the systems used to store data, run cloud services, manage digital networks, and support AI computing. The company has become deeply connected to the infrastructure powering the modern digital world. And recently, AI has accelerated that demand dramatically. Today, Dell's market value stands around $150 billion, more than double the valuation associated with its return to public markets in 2018. What once looked like a fading PC company quietly evolved into one of the major infrastructure providers powering the AI era. Looking back, the $25 billion buyout was never really just about leaving Wall Street. It was about giving Dell the freedom to rebuild and transform itself around where technology was heading. At the time, most people looked at Dell and saw a declining PC business. But Michael Dell saw where the tech industry was heading long before many investors did. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson here. Public markets often reward what looks exciting in the moment. But some of the biggest corporate transformations are only understood years after they begin. In Dell's case, the company many investors once believed was fading away ended up becoming one of the biggest beneficiaries of the infrastructure boom that followed. And it all started with a controversial decision in 2013, when Michael Dell walked away from Wall Street to rebuild the company his own way.